You are listening to PatchBay on tymkrs.
Welcome to PatchBay, sort of a conversational podcast all about audio equipment, music, audio engineering, recording, music production, live sound, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Lately, we've been kind of going on about game audio, Shane and I. I know, Shane, you started a conversation over at the Womb.
Yeah, just I started. I really like the womb. It's anti gear sluts, which is always a good thing. It always seems to be professionals answering questions and people who are just starting out or who have been working at it for a while. But it's really cool because there's like super professional guys that I could have time. But yeah, no, I started a thread about game audio because there was a discussion about you know other sources of income that I had started, and then that progressed to talking about game audio. So I started a new thread about game audio, and actually got some really good responses because there was a lot of people that were sort of asking the same questions as me, like, has anybody had any experience, this kind of stuff, and a bunch. I'll put a link up to the thread anyway, but a bunch of guys posted that you know are in the trenches and have been doing this for a long time, with a lot of kind of good notes as far as if you're doing this, if you're wanting to get into sound for game, some really good notes about it. Should I
Yeah.
go further than that?
Well,
Go to the
I
go to
read
the
through the forum and I have some comments on it too. Um, So a lot of the guys that responded, you got kind of lucky on it because the guys that responded are industry guys, right?
Mhm.
Guys that have worked for the big outfits like Zynga
LucasArts,
and
Zynga.
LucasArts and game companies that are known at the moment as having big titles and whatnot, Activision, etc. So you kind of got lucky in that, because those people aren't necessarily that easy to track down. It's kind of
No.
a little, they live off in their own little corner. And so it's kind of cool that those guys are hanging out there. But um, I don't, I, I wouldn't really recommend to anybody to, if you're thinking about getting into sort of game audio or production of sound effects and all that sort of thing, to necessarily think that working for a company like EA, for example, is the direction that you should try to go for,
Well,
right?
I agree with you. My last comment on there was, um, for me, it's definitely not a studio income kind of thing for me. This would be obviously something that I would like to take a crack at myself personally at home and work with, much like you're doing, work with somebody who's independent, who's so you can kind of learn and grow as they're learning and growing. Um, yeah, I just, like there was obviously some of these guys have years of, you know, some good times, some bad times, etc. that happen. So it's not so much jaded, but they're aware of the big version of the industry, which is quite a lot different, I think, than
Yeah,
sort of
it's
smaller.
completely different. And
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of folks that work in audio are used to working on maybe big, important projects, but working in a more intimate, situation. And
Mm.
in the big game companies, you're basically a number with HR department, right?
So yeah, for sure. I mean, and in some cases, you may be the only audio guy or one of three guys, but yeah, it's still a smaller thing. I think from the standpoint of getting into it as a hobby, which is kind of how I sort of started the conversation. I just wanted to hear from, like, I wanted to hear from anybody who had actually sort of worked, in it. I did kind of get lucky that there were guys that,
Totally.
are working on the huge scale of it. But I mean, just going to that whole jaded thing, if we talk about the music business, I can get into those same types of conversations pretty easily. Like, um, the way I look at it, as far as tunes go or music goes, out of it, for every 5 albums I do, there's usually one really good not so much sounding wise, but like good one that's received by people that was fun to, and those ones are the ones that seem to be that same project. But it's just the way it is. The longer you do something, the more you know ideas you have about it, right?
Yeah, totally. Now, as an alternative sort of direction, I wanted to sort of clarify a little bit that the game industry right now is in a really kind of weird place.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of the money for a while there got taken over by companies like Zynga, who are producing Facebook games and whatever. And a lot of the studios that are producing big titles, um, they all got bought by EA. So those kinds of things. You're talking about an environment where you're just sort of working on assembly line sort of thing, because all of the projects need like 10,000 different samples basically just put into a different format or entered
Hmm.
into their system, verified, checked, and you're basically kind of like a factory worker. And
Yeah.
I'm guessing most of the sort of people that would be interested in this show aren't really interested in that work.
Well,
Um,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
so as an alternative, we mentioned a lady who had done some singing work for a Slamacow video couple, yeah, last week. And that would be uh, Laura Sigahara.
Mhm.
And I mentioned that she works in the game industry. And I didn't really mean like big company game industry. She might, but what she's actually known for is doing the composing the soundtrack for Plants vs Zombies.
Oh God, my woman is
So,
addicted to that game.
yeah. So
Like
if you get
ridiculously
on a
addicted.
project like that, right? If the game becomes really popular,
Hmm.
then by association, you're gonna have doors open up for you.
For sure. For sure.
And
Yeah.
that's more the direction that I think the sort of people that I think would probably be listening to this show might want to be interested in looking into. And that's why we brought up the whole Ooh Yeah thing, because there's a lot of games in development right now for it.
I was gonna mention too, just to what you were saying about um, sometimes it is about taking that chance, um, and maybe doing something that you're not. A lot of the times, doing audio isn't always about the paycheck, and if you're really um, into video games, and you're into audio, then it only makes sense to sort of take that chance, and figure out other ways of getting by. But it's the one or the other. If you want to try to be the corporate number, or do you want to try and make something for yourself, you're gonna have to take some chances like that. I mean, even in doing just music, there's been this last week I was remastering a record on my own time because the client didn't like exactly what I did. So it just sort of happened. So if you're really passionate about it, you just kind of figure out a way to do it, right?
Yeah, and I would say that because there's been a huge change, and companies like Mojang have really absolutely just sort of changed the playing field in terms of how to make money with games, like the producers of the games themselves. Uh, the big companies like EA, their tactic is to buy up all of all of their competition and
Mm-hmm.
basically present a unified front to the planet. But guys like Notch over at Mojang, working by himself in his basement, just hacking on a game. And because he doesn't have all the overhead of EA, they spend millions and millions to develop a game. He spends like beer money, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, he, he makes
You
a
know,
heck of a lot more money than any of the employees over at EA ever will.
right.
And if you can get attached to a project like that early on by, say, hanging out in IRC channels where that kind of work is happening, you can
Mhm.
have a direct communication with the guy who's going to be the boss man.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And sort of rapport from there. Yeah, no, I mean that makes sense. Yeah, the thing is, it really, like with anything, not just game audio, but any kind of um, media stuff. It's really about networking and relationships, and when you are working on a project, trying to do, your best for it. Not so much that you're going to be judged on something, but there are times when you can be. So it's good just to always try to put your best foot forward, because you never know who you're talking to. I've worked with bands and then later worked with the drummer from the original band in a different band. This stuff kind of happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So,
And the
um,
example I gave there is actually what actually happened with Minecraft.
right.
Notch was hanging out in an IRC room, and this other guy, C418, was hanging out in the same IRC room, and Notch was like, man, I need music for this thing. And C418's like, I make music. And now, because of the popularity of the game, he's been able to release a somewhat successful album and done, film scores and such like that. So, it's just right place, right time kind of thing. But, we're
Exactly.
all pretty smart, right? So
What
putting
what was his
yourself in
name?
that position is the first step.
What was his name? T4.
C418.
Okay, I just want to make sure for later, uh, just for show notes reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's exactly it, and there's cases of that all across the board. With all kinds of different things too, right? Web design,
Yeah,
like
it really doesn't
startup.
matter what you're doing, if it's game music, if it's bands, if it's whatever.
Yeah,
If you make an effort to put yourself in a position to be successful, that can, you know,
it
that
can
can
happen.
make all the difference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. No, you're exactly right. Well, is that all you'd like to talk to about on the game thing?
Yeah, so to summarize, big is bad, small is good. Uh,
I was gonna mention too that on the Ouya uh, dev page, there's lots of discussions that are also going on. If you're interested in just trying to get into it from a starting off standpoint, not just about video games, like creating games, but also the audio part of it too. I was noticing some discussions
yeah,
happening.
some
So
people don't really they see the fact that it says video game in the title of video games, and they think that audio isn't a priority because they've had experiences working with the larger companies who are putting a lot more focus into, say, graphics and voiceover
let's
work and all that kind of
let's make this
thing.
thing hum. Well, that was part of those conversations on the Womb. Yeah.
Yeah, I did see a little bit of that, but this is something you'll find every time this sort of topic comes up is that they think that a lot of
Oh,
people
there's
get
just
the
bleeps in the
impression that
background.
what's that?
I said, oh, there's just bleeps in the background. Yeah, I know what you mean. They get the impression that it's just based on the whole video thing. It's like the same as watching a movie and putting it on mute. You lose everything.
Yeah, the
You know.
music is very important. The sound effects are very important, and they really do make or break a game. And it when you drop down to the indie community, they put a huge focus on music.
Yeah, for sure. Especially music. I think more importantly music than sound effects. I mean, sound effects are still important, but even with the film community too, I find that the some of the stuff that I've done, which is very limited, but the directors that I had worked with, they were very conscious of what music they had. One guy had everything pre-picked out that he wanted, like songs that he was going to license and stuff like that. So they already had an idea, and a lot of times what they'll do is put temp music in, then fall in love with it and have to license it anyway. So that's a really good point. If you're a band and you're looking for a way to make money, get your music out to filmmakers, because what happens is when they're editing after they've shot the movie, they're listening to tunes, they're going through their library and they're pulling tunes in to see how they feel with the visuals. And like I said, a lot of the times they just fall in love with the track that they were going to use as a temp place marker track and end up just having to get it. So, and a lot of these guys won't keep stuff like, extremely what would be an expensive song like an Elvis tune or something like that in their library. So it's a good idea, even if you're like, music that's not uh, you wouldn't think would work in a movie. There's all kinds of different movies, right? So you never know when it could be helpful, right?
Yeah. And if you're out there producing music or, are the one in charge of um, setting up the licensing for other people to use it on a catalog, then you should be aware that there's quite a few different services out there that make music available to the kinds of people who are looking for it, be it independent film people, game designers, stuff like that. And I think Shane came across a little bit of that with the Unity engine has some sort of a
The asset
licensing
store.
platform built in there.
They have the asset store, which uh like if I was a game designer, I'd be all over that, man. Like crazy. There's obviously lots of paid for downloads, but tons of free stuff you can get. But um, sound effects. There was some music soundtracks, but not a ridiculous amount. I think these guys are still mining it through either Creative Commons licensing music websites, which I've found a few. A lot of them still have. They're not completely free, pay per use or like free use music, but there is a lot. I'll see if I can find a few links to some, and I'll double check the asset store too. But I can't remember off the top of my head if there was. I know there was sound effects for sure.
Yeah. As a musician or producer, it's important to be very educated on Creative Commons license and other similar licenses, because in this modern era and strange economy, it seems like a lot of people are switching over to using that sort of platform to allow themselves to get up into a more appreciated and profitable position in the ad hoc industry. Yeah, it's very hard to get yourself out there sometimes, and by putting your material up in a place where people can use it for free with attribution, then your name ends up on the credit rolls for movies, YouTube shows, games, such like that. And
And
yeah,
I really wish people would, I really wish it was better known because there's lots of YouTube videos that are people who are using like music that they really shouldn't be, and um, and music that doesn't need any more plays. you know, like
so I'm gonna
go
cut
into
in here for just a second with the YouTube video thing. When you use music that you do not have license to use, YouTube now has a built-in system where it'll automatically put ads on your video and
right,
pay the person who owns the distribution rights for that track,
right,
regardless of any other deals you may have made with people. The ads will basically be hijacked by Universal Music Group or whoever happens to own the distribution rights.
that makes sense.
So, what I would
Yeah.
say, because it's so easy to get approved to get ads on your videos now, instead of using music that is copyright, just straight up, use music that's Creative Commons or stuff you've made yourself. Obviously, this kind of
Or chase
show,
down your
we're talking to
favorite
people.
band. Yeah, or chase down your favorite independent band and use their stuff. Like it doesn't matter what the people that are with Universal Music don't need any more money. Or Universal doesn't need any more money. So like I always say it's better to support.
My motivation for bringing it up is more like those. It's easy to have the ads turned on for you, and you could be putting the views, the
You're
revenue
getting
from
ads
that
yourself. Yeah.
into whatever you're working on, right? Rather than
Yeah.
having it go someplace else. Because
Oh,
in the last year or so, they changed the policies over there, and now every single video on YouTube basically has ads. There's no
yeah.
reason not to have ads on there anymore, because
Oh.
well, every video does. So
The public has gotten used to having the ads there, so you might as well make it better for yourself, and use music you can get away with so you get the ad money yourself rather than having to pay it, because you're using MC Hammer's track.
yeah, we of course compose all of our own music for our videos, and that works out fine. And YouTube still sometimes says you're using copyrighted material, and I'm like, well, yes, I am. Mine.
Yeah, it's mine, my own.
Stop nagging at me. It's mine.
I've had some fun with them the last few years.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's been a lot of bumps in that road lately.
yeah,
So you said that you were working through converting a whole bunch of music over for your dad?
yeah, yeah. Thank God for Switch. Just Google it. It's a MP3 converter. What the problem is he's got WMA, MP3, and AAC files, and he just wants all of his tunes on just MP3. And what he's planning on doing, he does a lot of traveling. He's got a 1 terabyte drive. So what he's going to do is he's going to plug this drive into his car stereo. So he's entirely fine. He can drive to Calgary and back and never run out of tunes. The problem is when some of these players won't play WMAs and most of them won't play AACs properly unless it's being played through an iPod. And he had iTunes for a while, and then he had he had Windows Media for a while, and he just keeps switching. It's best to stick to like one audio program on your computer when you can.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm doing is I'm dumping all of the files off of um, 3 computer systems. He had a desktop and 2 laptops that has all kinds of various formats, and using Switch. But I'm going to use Switch on my Mac. You can download it for PC as well, but you got to watch because a lot of these downloaders add the extra toolbars and all that BS that you don't need. Uh, anyway, it does a really good job of converting WMA to MP3 with no real loss as far as I can tell, and I think they're 192 as far as I remember. The only problem I have is the AAC files, which are uncrackable, so you need to burn CDs of them and then re-rip them into the computer, which is a whole lot of fun. But I'm talking like probably 8,000 songs that I have to sort of shuffle through. So
Everything is crackable.
it's crap. Yeah, AAC is a pain in the ass. The only way that the workaround that I've figured out is to burn it and re-rip it, but that's a pain in the ass.
There's a great phrase that I think sums up the entire topic of that. If the computer is able to convert it into um, analog sound waves, it's able to convert it over to another format. It
Yeah.
may not want you to, it may get in your way, but it's completely possible.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, the problem that I've had, because I'm so used to working on faster computers, that I'll go in iTunes and it'll bring up the WMAs, and I'll just highlight 600 of them and go convert to MP3, and then the computer will just go and stall, you know. So the good thing about Switch is it's not a processor hog, you know. So it kind of does it in the background, which is quite handy. Every
Especially
time,
if you're doing a huge library.
yeah, if you're doing a huge whack like that, I'm like I said, I downloaded it to put on the PC just to make sure I could get it as a download. But I'll probably just do it on my Mac one morning, and I'll probably do it, an hour. Like the one time I did try to do it on, I think it was like a 1 gig of RAM system, and it just died on me. So yeah, it's a whole bunch of fun, but c'est la vie. So yeah, I'm doing that just so I get free lunches once in a while.
Yeah. I actually found out that some of my music ended up in someone's car audio library, and they've been subjecting other people to it.
Nice. That's always a good thing, no?
Yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah, it's kind of neat knowing that a bunch of random people are hearing my music that I'll never
Gotta
meet.
check this out, man. I'm that guy. I am so that guy. Anytime somebody gets in the car, you gotta check this out. And they're usually just, yeah, okay.
So
But
here's a funny story to go along with that. Same person um, was doing something where they wanted some sound effects from Star Wars, the R2D2 sounds, and they downloaded it to some random directory on their computer. And when they scanned their computer for pulling all of their audio files down to their iPod, it inadvertently picked up the R2D2 files as well. So he's cruising down the road. He's got people in the car, And song finishes, and then R2D2 makes his dying sounds, and everyone in the car is like, huh? What in the world?
That's awesome. Oh, geez. So that was like the last track on it?
Well, he had it on random, so every so often R2D2 makes little bleepy noises between songs, evidently.
That reminds me of Fanboys. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just that he has an R2 on top of his, like the top of the head of R2 on top of his van.
Yeah, that's a pretty epic van.
Yeah, when he pushes the red button, you actually hear R2 scream. When he, like when he's on the one ship and it moves, it dips or whatever, and you see him go flying like woo, that sound effect. So they use that sound effect when the car takes off, which is hilarious. So yeah, I love that. It's a great movie, absolutely great movie.
Yeah, it was a pretty fun one.
Because I know a bunch of fanboys, like guys who dressed up like Boba Fett. So they're entertaining. They're an entertaining group.
Oh yeah, you know that the Lucas place that they go to in the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, the high security and all that sort of thing. One of my buddies has actually been in and out of that area, that whole complex many times.
Oh really?
Yeah.
It didn't seem as well. Yeah, they made it look a lot easier to get in and out of it, but yeah, it's such a good. Okay, cool. So what else would we like to talk about?
Well, I just wanted to mention to folks that we're still doing the push on trying to get the show out there to folks because it's still very new. And I know there's a lot of people out there that would enjoy it, but we just don't have an efficient way of letting them know that it's there. So if you guys could help us out and let people know, anyone that you think would be interested in this sort of conversation, just, pass them the link. We'd appreciate it. It's pretty nice of y'all. And I started putting we record these in a bit in advance just so that we don't get behind. But this week, here as we were recording, I put up episode 1 of PatchBay on YouTube. Nice. So if you guys ran across the show on YouTube, welcome. And the shows come out earlier on the actual website than YouTube. So there's an inside Cool Kids Club secret for you. There's probably a lot of shows you haven't seen yet if you're listening to this on YouTube.
Yeah, we're hopefully quite a lot ahead by this point. I was gonna say too, and in case anybody has any comments or questions, they can always email us at
feedback@tymkrs.com, and those emails come to me. I get them right away, and I may respond to you directly, or I may pass it along to Shane, depending on what's appropriate. But that's basically all the time we have for today. Did you have anything else, Shane?
Nope, not off the top of my head. Nope. I have some
how
ideas
are the
for
Leafs
next show.
doing? Did they?
The Leafs are currently down 2-0, I believe. I'm currently watching Columbus and Detroit.
This is why everyone out there should think twice before involving any Canadians in your podcast, because they'll watch hockey while you're trying to work.
Here's the good thing, though. The Leafs will never make it to the playoffs, so when June and July come around, I'm all yours, no problem. Because they haven't won the cup since '67, and they haven't made the playoffs in 7 years.
Okay, so we're probably safe.
We're totally safe. Lord help me if they ever actually make it. I don't even know what I'll do with myself, because hockey's on hockey right now is on every night of the week. Anyway, speaking of which, I also sent you the link to the AHL team in your town.
Oh, thank you.
On Twitter, so go do a game, because they're actually pretty good. There's a storied history behind the Rochester Americans.
Cool. I'll have to look into it.
Yeah. So now we've went from game audio to hockey.
Yeah, hockey music is always a good one too. We might have to talk about stadium foot stomping music sometime too, but not today, because that's all the time we have for today. You guys can find this show every Friday. Usually goes up in the evenings at patchbay.tv. You can listen to it on the page. You can see it much later on YouTube now. And there's an RSS feed there too on the website. You can subscribe to it with your phone, iTunes, whatever, if you want to listen to it in the car. I'd say this is a pretty good show for a commute. Nice half-hour length, just right. All right, that's it for us. We'll see you guys next week.